let's start the session, the place of music in EU policy and funding. It's a very, very broad theme, of course. And I'm very happy to be here with Antje Valentin, Secretary General from the German Music Council, and Mila Georgieva, Director of Bulgarian Music Association, Vice President, sorry, thank you. So very happy to have the two of you with me here so that we can also look at the national perspective a little bit and maybe see a bit how EU policy and national policy could interact, should interact. As said, it's a very, very broad theme and we can touch upon many issues. And here I would really also like to have feedback from you. What is most important for you to look at a bit more closely, or where you would like to share your own experience. So that said, I will start with a very brief introduction of the European Music Council, the organization that I represent. We are the broadest network for music sector stakeholders in Europe. Broadest in the sense that we really cover the whole sector. It's cross-genre, it's really pan-European. It's not only EU members, but really Europe in a geographical and cultural sense. And yeah, as said, cross-genre, all different professions, also amateur education. So it's really very, very comprehensive, the European Music Council. And it's a European group of the International Music Council. And our work is based on the 5 music rights. Yeah, I think you can read that. So that's rights that have been proclaimed by the International Music Council, and that's really what we stand for. So you can maybe just to quote the first one, freedom of expression, so that every citizen has the right to express themselves musically in all freedom. And the last one, which kind of gives the bracket, to obtain just and fair remuneration and recognition for all musical artists. So that's really the basic of our work. We are a membership organization, so I'm very happy to have 2 members here with me, the German Music Council and the Bulgarian Music Association. They represent 2 of our membership categories, the music councils and the national organizations. And we also have a 3rd category that are European or international organizations. For example, LIVEMX represents clubs and venues. So we have the ECHO, the concert halls organizations, European Choral Association, or the Music Conservatoire. So that's the scope of our membership. And very briefly, our aims and objectives. Mainly 3 main areas of activities. We do advocacy work, where we mainly are in touch and an interlocutor with the European Commission or the EU, also the Parliament. We empower our members, we offer capacity building, and of course we create, as a network, we create alliances. We do cooperation projects, we have a big conference. So that's very, very briefly about the European Music Council. Now, what we would look at today is at one hand, funding, EU funding. And you might know that there are very, very different possibilities to ask for funding on EU level, but of course also on national level and on local level. We don't have time to go into that all together today, of course, but I would like to at least quote one project which is open, which has a call open right now. It's not a project run by the European Music Council. It's a project run by EMI, the European Music Export Exchange, LIVEMX, and an organization based in Portugal, Innova Plus. And it's, as the name indicates, it's for live music, for music export, and also for digital solutions. As said, they have the calls open right now. You have the website indicated here. And it is EU funding with the aim to be open for smaller entities, because very often EU funding is not so easy accessible. So this is an attempt to have it more accessible, also open for European, for smaller organizations. So I leave it there and I let you figure out. But before I continue, I would like to ask Antje and Mila if you would like to also share some ideas about national funding, or in which way this relates to your work in terms of funding, and also on the long run maybe policy work for funding before we go further. Would you like to start maybe, Antje?
Thank you very much. It's a huge amount of possibilities for funding for music in Germany. And first of all, I like to call to tell you about it's our. Oh, I have to read it. German Federal Cultural Ministry for the whole Republic, and they have several funds. It's Music Fund or Initiative Musik. So these are own organizations who are who can give some money for special projects, for ensembles, for the help for creative industries too, in every genre of music. And there are several more because we have this national funds for our federal states. It's one fund and one fund of the whole republic. It's for the culture in general, but you can make very good music stuff with them too.
And so that's specific funding for music and culture, if I understand you well. And is there also, are there other funding streams, not screams, for other policy areas where also cultural organizations or music organizations could apply?
There are a lot more, but I can't tell about all because we have much what's the name, foundations who are offering programs for music and cultural life and cultural education else. Mm-hmm. But I would suggest look at our National Music Information Center online, musikinformationszentrum.de. It's MIZ meets Musikinformationszentrum, and you find everything about Germany and funding for music.
Okay, thank you. How is the situation in Bulgaria? I guess it's a bit different, but also maybe a bit the same. Mila, what are your...
Yeah, it's different. Like we have all our funds are situated in like big funds, but they are situated, all the money for the culture, and they're in few funds, like they're local or on a national level. So our biggest fund is the National Culture Fund, where they have many programs and open calls that you can apply, and of course music organizations can apply. We have the Ministry of Culture. It is a special program for music creation and distribution. It's focused on the live music industry. And we have Sofia Municipality Funds, the cultural program, as in Sofia are based almost 80% of the cultural organizations. So this is a very big fund. And yes, and there are two other cities that they have their own fundings, the municipal fundings, like Plovdiv and Varna, and Burgas actually from, okay. So we have these ones. And we now have the recovery plan programs for culture that are open in
pandemic. Recovery after the pandemic, is that?
It's the European Resilience Plan. How would you say it? Yeah, sorry, because we call it in Bulgarian like the recovery. It's the translation. And we have programs for culture. We have program for export. We have program for creation. Program for little municipalities funding, cultural calendar funding. So this is a new instrument we are having now. And what we do is to try to find the place of and the opportunities for the music industries to have access also to some kind of support through other ministries, like Ministry of Trade and Economics. Yeah. That's it.
I forgot an important point because of our structure of as a federal republic with 16 federal republic states, we have in every state own fundings and own programs for supporting the music.
So as we can see, the scene, so to say, for the possibilities are very, very diverse. And my question to you would be, are you aware of this very, very diverse funding system? Do you know about that? Does that relate maybe to your own constituency, your own context in your own countries? And further to that, what would you need? Because we know about these things, and we also advocate for good funding opportunities, not only for more money, but also for better access, for information visibility to all these different grants that we have. So my question to you is, what would you need? And also, what can we from the music sector offer? I mean, why should public money be there for the music sector? So open question for you, if you would like. It's very difficult. I see. Would you like to speak? Yes? Yeah. No, did you raise your hand? I don't know. It's very difficult to see. I take the first, if you don't move, just go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Vera Plosila, representing Baroque Orchestra Ensemble Nylandia. I'm a freelance musician also. It's really interesting. So we are very well versed in our national systems, and actually I lived some time in Germany, and I'm very grateful for the support of the MusicRat at some point. But there seems to be this kind of gap. So in Finland, the EU funding for music export is coordinated through Music Finland mostly. And I feel like there's this kind of funding, a big hurdle to get over to access this type of EU funding that's directed towards the international market. Like that seems to be, I don't know, of course, and it's not fully public information also that why wouldn't we get some of this funding as a mid-sized organization? But I do have this feeling that in a way it does favor the bigger actors in the field who can show really impressive results as orchestras, as concert series. And there is so much potential in kind of the lower tier, in early music, for instance, in Europe, that would this be something that on EU level and with the member states then could be coordinated slightly? I'm just going to say better, because it's not very accessible.
It's the accessibility aspect, in terms of size of organization, if I understand it well. And maybe also complexity of the application.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I take a few more questions or points, and then we can maybe collect. Is there any other contribution? Yes, there's one over there.
Hi, I'm based in Germany, and I manage an orchestra. I actually haven't looked at any EU possibilities because I've been given to understand that the application process for anything and the requirement of finding cooperation partners in at least 2 other countries is something where I'm just saying, well, that's so difficult. I'm just not going to go there. Is that the case? Maybe I'm assuming something which is now no longer not true.
As I said, I will collect a bit, and then I try to memorize. And at the 5th point, I might take my notebook. Maybe one more before I also would like to hear otherwise. There's one, yes.
Yeah, kind of. Hello, I'm Christopher. I'm a freelance composer. Kind of on the same vein as the previous comment. I'm based in Sweden right now, and Sweden, wonderful part of the EU, but it is kind of a bit less centralized than other parts of Europe. And I know, at least within Sweden, you have to have certain structures in your organizations or ensembles to be even considered for funding locally. And I imagine that also applies on an EU level too. And I just wonder whether you can speak to the difficulties for smaller community ensembles trying to find funding for their projects in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. So I also pass the same question to you before I try to maybe, because you, okay? If you're okay.
Yes, I was thinking about the question because I think to find partners in other countries is the mostly the problem when I get it right. And I think the local music councils could help because we know about the associations of free ensembles In Germany, it's FREO, Freie Ensembles, and I think there will be some ensembles interested to have connections with others in other European countries, and perhaps to make a program together and an application in a Creative Europe program.
Yeah, thank you. And Mila, what is your?
Yeah, because I was thinking about most of the programs and priorities in the EU programs, especially, are for cooperation. And so if there is some gap missing for special kind of ensembles, as you say, that means that probably we should think about making a project that provides funding like LiveMX for something special that is already missed. Because if they try to apply directly, it is a really that it's not so accessible when you know that. But what I was thinking is, in general, we need different approach. I really believe that EU needs different approach to programs, because of course, being a the funding part, they really look for sustainability, but they look for sustainability within the applicants. So they are the same organizations that continue because of their sustainable. They can count on them. But the reality is that there is no policy in supporting startups, let's say. Like,
you
even
mean
though
sustainability, not in the sense of green, but in the sense of always the same kind, right?
No, that it is a stable partner, a stable organization. You can count that they will report the money and they will make, so you won't have issues with them. So it is a really safe play for them. But what we miss, and I know because I had this conversation on European level, when I know that it's very important for them to be safe when they give out money. But the problem is that there is almost no support, even in local level, national level, the support for startups, for starting projects that I actually need push from the beginning, and with a business plan after 5 years or 3 years, they can be independent business units or economic units. So this is something that is missing, and I feel it every day for different situations. And this is something I believe we need to try to find a way to talk about. That it is a weird trend, because of course there are organizations like NGOs that are networks that they contribute to the overall development of the culture in the European Union. But from the other side, there are actually organizations that they live only on projects. Like, no, it's not one. A network is a network. Yeah, these are like private businesses covered by under NGOs that are doing. This is their business. Like European funding is their business, and they have no backup plan if they stop applying for different projects. And this is something that we need to think about, I believe, how to support the new ventures and the new people, the new ensembles, the people who try to know that everybody knows it's hard, but you know that you can count on somebody, or there is an instrument for that. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mila, also for sharing that. I think some of the questions are not fully answered, but partly answered, at least by an initiative of which also the LiveMX project is part of. It's the whole initiative that is called Music Moves Europe, an initiative by the European Union and Parliament. And as I said, this is not a project that has been implemented by the European Music Council, but we did a similar one which just ended. So there's no call open, but maybe I can still share some of the experiences and also recommendations that we formulated, which take up some of the points that have been mentioned. So the project is called MusicAIRE, and we had also the same partner Innova Plus and the European Music Council. We were the two consortium partners. And in EU jargon, this is called cascading grants. So what the EU is doing is opening an application, a call for consortia who will then implement the funding scheme. And it was also our task to invent new models for calls for applications, to make it less complicated, to make it more accessible. And indeed, we had what in EU jargon is called mono-beneficiary application. So only one organization could apply. And I must say, I don't know if this is also the case with the LiveMX, but I think so. So there was, of course, and then in this way, it was also a door opener, so to say, for smaller organizations. Also, the funding was much lower than the EU funding that we know about, or you might also know from Creative Europe, where the minimum amount is a 200,000 euro grant to which you have to find your co-funding. So in MusicAIRE, the lowest grant was 15,000 with a co-funding of 10%. That's, of course, a totally different story. And for the calls that are now open, you would have to look up in the LiveMX page, but I think it's a similar scope. So the positive news is EU is listening, and we have been successful in advocating for that. At the same time, of course, there are also issues. For MusicAIRE, for example, we had the funding rate was very, very low. It was a bit a victim of its success as well, because we had many applications and could only funding very few because the budget, we did not have enough budget. But we will continue our recommendations, of course, on that behalf. And I think the access issue is a very important one. Now, that said, of course, I must not, but I feel like defending the EU a little bit because what we always need to take into consideration is the so-called principle of subsidiarity, which means that culture in principle is on member state. It's organized and funded and administered on member state level. Germans might know this system from Germany because it's the same. It's not administered on national level, but on the federal state level in Germany. It's a bit the same, but not exactly. But this is something that we have to take into consideration. And this is why in culture, only cross-border transnational projects can be funded directly from the EU. And also in our project, we could accept, we also had to follow EU rules, of course, with the implementation. We could accept just one applicant, but this applicant had to prove the so-called European added value, the international outreach, if you wish, of the project. So that just to say that, of course, there's also a reason for all this. And maybe to go to the recommendations that we formulated. Of course, the first point, you can say it's always the same. It's needless to say. I think it's not. It's very important to always state, of course, we need a good budget. We need a good financial envelope. And the negotiations will start now or are already running for the next period of EU funding, the Multiannual Financial Framework. And of course, we will advocate for a good envelope for funding for culture, including these cascading grants. So that's a very important point. Another very important point is, yes, it's probably very good to have expert organizations from the sector, like the European Music Export Office, like LiveDMA, like the European Music Council, who actually know the sector. We know who could potentially be a beneficiary of the project, someone who benefits from the project. So we can design the calls for applications knowing the sector. It's totally different, of course, for someone, for an administrator on EU level at the Commission who has done law studies or so. It's a totally different story. So that's a good thing. However, as I said before, we also had to apply for the funding that we distributed, but also for the administration of this project. And that's, of course, a bit a difficult story. We even had to come up with a co-funding. So we did the administration work, so to say, for the EU Commission, but had to pay our own 10% co-funding to do this work. And this is we see a bit of a disbalance here. And that's what we argue for, that's what we advocate for. And lastly, but definitely not at least, is a regular dialogue that we ask for. And also, you have already mentioned it, there are also funding programs, not only, there are funding opportunities not only in Creative Europe, not only in the culture program, but also there are many other programs as well. You have mentioned with that you on national level, you also you look for funding opportunities from investment, from economy. So, and therefore we need dialogue. We not only need dialogue with representatives from the Director General for Culture, but also with other DGs. And these are a bit the findings from the MusicAIRE project, which we are lobbying for. That's a bit in a nutshell. And I see you would like to take a floor. I would also maybe ask Benjamin if you have some ideas to share, but maybe Mila first.
Yeah, just wanted to add up on that. What we do in Bulgaria is trying to open the investments and the recognition of the industries, so we can separate the business values from the culture ones. So this will clear the air, and I believe on European level this will clear the air, because there are a lot of businesses, and because business is not a bad word, exactly the opposite, but they need to cover what they do, so they to can access some help for them to develop, and they cover this pretending that their work is with higher cultural values, because they have no other access. And with this, if on European level, if we try to do the same and to open up this kind of investment from other institutions, it will be really good, so we can separate industries, culture from cultural values, from social values, or I think that this will clear the air somehow, and it will be easier for everyone, and nobody will have to hide that actually they want to make money out of music, and this is not a dirty word.
Yeah, no, I agree and I disagree, but I will say that later. Benjamin, we have Benjamin Feyen here as the Secretary General of the Cultural Creators Friendship Group in the European Parliament, and I'm sure you have a lot to say on Creative Europe and Music Moves Europe and what I've presented before. And don't hesitate to correct whenever I said something not totally correct. Benjamin.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And I was invited by Ruth to just be here and maybe comment on something. Just very briefly, I coordinate this group, Cultural Creators Friendship Group, which is an informal coalition of members of the European Parliament from different countries, different political groups, and we try to improve EU legislation for the benefits of the culture and creative sectors and creators. Myself, I was also in a previous role involved in negotiating the Creative Europe program that was already mentioned. So far, it's all been correct, so nothing to correct you, but maybe to add something or to wrap up a little bit. First of all, as Ruth rightly mentioned, it's a bit complicated when it comes to EU funding for culture because as rightly mentioned, the EU does not have that much competence. So it has to be either with an international dimension, partners in 3 different countries at least, or it has to have, which is less relevant for music maybe, but something to do with translation, for example, translation of books, translation or subtitling of movies. So that's an area where the EU can take action in the area of culture. So that's important to understand why it's maybe a bit more complex. However, somebody mentioned in a question that it's only bigger or mostly bigger project. There is the Culture Moves Europe program that started, I think, 1.5 years ago, which is essentially something like the Erasmus program that is quite well known. Many of you might know about it. It's basically something like an Erasmus program, but for creators, artists, authors. So that there are little grants, but for individuals. So it's much easier to get that. So I would invite you to maybe Google that. Secondly, there is a specific online guide for funding in the cultural and creative sectors, which is called Culture EU Funding Guide. Culture EU, and the last E of culture is the E of the EU. Hope you get that. It's a website, quite handy, and you can basically just tell the website or just tick the boxes. Who are you? What are you planning to do? And it will come up with some interesting funding. And there we are at the third point, which was also mentioned, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is the roughly 700 billion euro post-COVID recovery fund. And in this context, I really want to highlight that the Creative Europe program, which is the EU program for culture, is very small when it comes to the absolute amount. It's 2.5 billion euros for the 7-year budget, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually really small in comparison to many other budgets. But there are a lot of funds, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, but also beyond that, for example, cohesion funds. For example, there's the so-called Just Transition Fund, which is meant to turn industrial regions into more modern, like coal and steel regions, for example, to turn into more modern, to modernize them basically. And there's funding for that. There's funding for greening everything. And if you look into all those funds, you can apply them to culture as well. So there's a lot of money in there, which is not directly or not at first sight meant to be spent for culture, but which can be used for culture. So try to make use of that. And again, the Culture EU funding guide that I mentioned also covers all those funds. So just to invite you to take a look at that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Benjamin. I see that both of you are eager to contribute, but I would like to first ask if there are questions.
I would like to ask him.
Floor?
Okay.
Yeah, and we come back to that later, just to check if you have any questions or comments to what has been said or would like to share experience. Yes. Go ahead if you.
Yeah, I don't want to hog the mic too much, but so from what I understand, so there is EU policy and then there's the implementation of the policy and the schemes in a way. What kind of data and material do you use to generate this? Like, I really feel like there's a certain discrepancy between the kind of live active field. For instance, so an experience from the cultural, the Creative Europe program is that it's quite a big application. For us, it was 70 pages. Now it's only 50 pages on the next round. So, and the kind of the criteria for our partners, it's no problem to find partners. I mean, musicians are like traditionally very networked, but also there are no bigger structures like institutions, for ensembles unless they are needed. Like the lighter, the better. If you can invoice through your own company, then you're not going to start an ensemble company unless you really have to. That excludes a lot of ensembles already from this. So I'm really a bit curious, like what kind of surveys and things have been made to come up to this conclusion that this is the best way to evaluate the competence of the participating applicants in a way, for instance, in a collaboration program.
I mean, first of all, it's I'm not the EU and none of us is representing the EU, just to make that very clear. I think there's a lot of simply administrative and logistic reasons. In the for Creative Europe, you definitely have to have a legal entity. So there has to be a legal partner. For the MusicAIRE project, we also had to give this that there has to be a legal entity. But as it was also open for just one applicant, it could also be the single company. I mean, single person company of one artist that would have been possible. So as I said, I mean, it also has to be administratable, if I can say that. And of course, if every citizen in Europe applies for the grant, it couldn't work. That said, we had to take it also from the other angle, what is feasible. And not necessarily, but that's also why I asked, what are the needs? What should we take? What should be taken into consideration? What could we take on to the European Commission? But now I answered, and I did not give you the floor. So you wanted to comment to earlier questions.
No, I wanted to comment that how many of you are aware with the European Mobility Program? Culture Moves Europe? Yeah. All of you? No? Okay. I was just interested because Bulgarian Music Association is an organization that represents artists, performers. Like we are the major representative, so we are working directly with peers. And because this program, we need to interfere for the next cause because it's a big disappointment for most of the people because it doesn't work. It is just to let you know, it's something which is very easy. It's extremely easy to apply. It's extremely user friendly to get the money. And because you don't report them, you report only that activity is done. So it's clear that way. It's very accessible. The issue is that probably when it was invented, the dynamics of the music, especially in our case in music, were not considered very much. So it is a residence program. So you can apply only if you're going to stay at least 1 week somewhere. You have a limitation when you are the person you apply individually that you can apply up to a group of 5 people, and it's not allowed if you are a bigger ensemble or a choir like other people to apply again for the same thing but for other 5 people because, for example, you're 20 people in the choir or the ensemble, and they have another. Have given another option, which is a different scope of the program, which is if you are a hosting organization, but then you are an organization, and if you want to go there and you're the musician, you have to ask the organization to apply, which is usually not very well working around. Usually, you want to go there and to organize the things for yourself. That's why I wanted to comment on that program because the program is really friendly and very accessible, but it needs fine tuning so it can work better for the music sector.
For music, exactly.
Yes.
It's not ideally conceived for music, but we will pass on that message. Thanks a lot, Mila, for sharing that.
I wanted to ask you if you know any platform or portal to match ensembles or musicians in other countries or institutions, music institutions.
I'm not aware of any, to be honest, so I can't really say anything about that. As for Culture Moves Europe, I fully agree that's a shortcoming of the initiative or the project. I should mention, though, I work at the European Parliament. The European Parliament is responsible for the legal basis of the Creative Europe program. So it's the European Commission who has designed Culture Moves Europe. I think it's a great design. It's targeted at small groups or individuals, but you're totally right. For ensembles, choirs, it's more difficult, and that's what I can pass on to the colleagues from the Commission, so that in the next run they maybe change something there. And yeah.
I don't understand why they actually have a rule about that. Like, if you can apply for 5 people. But it's forbidden somebody else to apply for the same project, but for other people. Like, why actually it's this restriction? Not to go to have a party, a bigger one, or what? Sorry, but
20 people don't work. No, I don't know.
You would have to ask the European Commission. I will do that when I talk to the colleagues next
please,
time. And I will take note of that for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There is another theme for culture and its health. Culture and health is a theme in Europe we spoke about, and this morning I got breakfast in our parliament because of music therapy and art therapy, and it's really important to know about that. There is could be another DG who could be in charge for culture too.
Yeah, there has also been a dialogue call, Voices for Culture, it's called, on culture and health. So there is some dialogue about that ongoing, but that certainly can be deepened. That's for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Would anyone from you like to comment on the theme of culture and health? Is that or bring up any other issue after your more questions?
Yeah, there's a big study that's being done in the United States right now, and I've completely forgotten the professor's name who's in charge of it, but there's a lot of data being collected on the impact. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested, we can talk about it afterwards, and I can look it up in the meantime.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Again, the look at the floor. Use the momentum to ask questions. Let's use the presence that Benjamin is here with us, that we can put more questions to the Parliament or to the Commission on your plate, and we will also take it on. It's really hard to see, but I hope there is no other voices from the floor. Then maybe we continue our debate here on the floor. I said when you talked about the differentiation between business and art, I said I agree and I disagree. So maybe I can go further a bit for that. And I think in the end we don't disagree that much, knowing each other quite well also. We have a couple of years ago launched the process for the European Agenda for Music. I have already been speaking about that in the previous panel, a long consultation process where we tried to bring the entire music sector together and to converge the many different voices that we have in the music sector. And there we came up with these three aspects of music and of art in general: the business one, the music as a product; the art one, music as an art form; and the social one for personal and also societal development. I totally understand if you say we need to separate so that it's clear for everyone where to apply for funding, and I also, of course, fully agree that business is not a dirty word, and money. I mean, we all want to earn money. Even if I work for an NGO, I consider myself not being part of the business sector, but of course I want to have a salary. I mean, that's clear. But I think there's also a danger in separating the two, because in particular in music, and in particular with this threefold approach, music in any way contributes to all the three of them. And it's very difficult, and I think probably that is what behind your comment, for example, of a club, which you might rather consider being part of the business sector. Of course, smaller clubs, that they can hardly live from their ticket sales or so. So I fully agree that public funding should be available for this part of the sector. And I also fully agree that we have to look, and that's what I said at the beginning, or what is also written here, that we have to bring money from different DGs also together. But I wonder if by separating we can achieve that aim, or if we not rather need to combine it more and bring encourage the dialogue between the different DGs or committees in the Parliament or what have you.
Yeah, my approach was a little bit different, that everybody can have access to different programs based on what their project is about. Because in what we are dealing with on national level, what we are dealing with is that music is not recognized as an industry at all by all the authorities that are connected to this. Like you talk about festivals that sell tickets, festivals that are actually really huge economic impact. But the institutions that are working within the economics trade, they really don't consider when they hear a festival, but you have a Ministry of Culture, but the Ministry of Culture does not support the businesses, the industries. So the idea is everybody who is in working within the cultural field, even though it's with commercial values or education or whatever, they can have the right to have different options to apply for. I have a business project and I know that there is a program for business. I'm not searching for another program that I have to write down that I have a very huge, social contribution values for what I do because I need the money to start my business. And this is something that if you have different opportunities, it's not it's not necessary to be hidden under some other stuff. This is what I meant, because this will clear the air. It doesn't mean that you separate the people. Everybody from the industry can have a cultural an art project for music or a business project. It can be the same entity. It's just a different project. That's what I meant. That it will clear the air somehow.
Yeah. Thanks for clarification on that. Again, looking in the floor. Is that back?
We see a hand. It's not.
No, it's.
You need to have the microphone because of the recording.
So for me, it's the other way around as well. It's not only business versus other socially or whatever bounded fundings. It's also, if I just want to have a musically themed, aesthetically themed funding, especially if you're working in the youth field, you always have to have something like social impacts or whatever. And the problem with funding with the EU, I think, is always of course, I can all everything and turn to something else, but I have also at the end record the implementation and give results according to the goals that I've been defining in the beforehand. So this is also the other way around. It's not just I have an economic interest or a business. I just have aesthetically or musically ideas and themes, and I can't find a funding that's only bound to this.
Yeah, thanks also for that comment. Of course, now we can open the debate if there is not always also something else to music and to the arts than aesthetics, but I think that might be with the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes that we have, that we might go a bit too far. But if anyone would like to comment on that, I invite you to take the floor, and this brings me to the next, or to one other subject which goes a bit into a similar direction, because not only social impact is very important to write funding applications nowadays, but of course also climate action. And we receive a lot of questions and also concerns and fears. Do we now all have to add one green concert to get the funding or so? I think this goes a bit in a similar direction. That said, the European Music Council is very active in advocating also for climate action and for responsibility, for eco-responsible behavior. And we also take that into our policy work, because we see this risk with funding. We also see this risk with funding from the European Union, that there will be a layer added in complexity to the funding applications. And we advocate for a customized approach to this. I think in particular in the music sector, in the culture sector, the awareness is very, very high that we all have to behave in an eco-responsible way. And therefore we advocate for customized rules, so that we don't have new funding rules. You have to do this in this green way, or you don't have to travel anymore, or you whatever should reduce your concert productions to so and so many per year, or what any strict rules that there could be there, but rather to have an approach where every funding applicant can say by themselves, what is my contribution? What am I going to do to contribute to climate action, and in particular to avoid to make the funding applications more complex, and to oblige all of us to add another layer. But of course, always taking into consideration our responsibility for the climate, for our planet, and also for the awareness raising about the potential for the arts sector and the music sector in climate. Antje, am I right in realizing that you wanted to speak to that, or no? Or can I invite you to give your comment?
Yes, I like to, because in the national funds it's the same theme, and it seems that we more and more get this in applications, that you have to show your CO2 footprint.
Yeah,
Thank you. And just our Ministry of Culture for the whole Republic founded an advisory board for green culture, and we try to advise the cultural scene how to act.
Thank you. You have a comment?
I cannot. So you invited me to bring some spice, but like, of course, music and culture needs to contribute and to build awareness for everything. For of course, taking care of our planet, being working with minorities, and to be socially inclusive, to be gender balanced, and whatever it is. But because I had a very recent experience with application for my personal project, I do, and from the Resilience Recovery Plan program. And at some point, like, we have so many things now that are a must in a project concerning the climate, concerning everything I mentioned, that at the end, but the program name is to creation, like you can create or establish something new. And the last thing you actually, if you need to fulfill all these things, the last thing you have money for is actually create the thing that you, and this is something that is actually becoming really heavy in the programs and the funding. Yes, it is something that we need to be aware of, but the requirements are so many that at the end you, firstly, you have the points from the project they're coming only from this. Like, it's very small amount of the real, actually, activity in the project, and this is something which bothers me. And even though I'm a person who really thinks that we need to be to contribute to this, to be part of this, of taking care of the planet and everything, we forget, like the programs forget, and EU, or they forget that the first thing you need to do is to create something, and they don't leave you the resources within the program. And then you see, but why am I applying? Like 90% of my budget will go to things that actually I really don't intend to do. Like, I have to give 20% of the budget in this project to create a workshop or some work with the minorities. And I want to make a festival.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I didn't want to turn down any of the contributions, of course, and that is something that what we also argue for, that we still should receive money for creation and for artistic work. That should be our first aim. Of course, the music as an art form is that's why we gather here together as well. So thanks for bringing that up once more. I think it was very, very important. I'm looking at my watch. I think we have a few more minutes, and of course, talking about policy and politics, I would not leave this hall without mentioning the European Parliament's elections, and of course invite you all to go vote, and also invite you to try to convince your constituency to go vote. Maybe with one example how you could do that. Yeah, that's our activities on culture. There's an activity, a campaign which is called Pop the Vote. It's a campaign by Culture Action Europe. And you have the website here again, and there's the possibility to contribute and to engage with election campaigns, and to contribute to the place of music and culture in the European policies for the new parliament. And I think that's also a very important part, that we should contribute, because of course we need a strong and active and democratic European parliament for the next election period. So that's an encouragement. And again, the question, if you have already been active in any kind of election campaign, or if that rings a bell, if you maybe have known about this activity, or Benjamin, if you would like to contribute on this or on something else from the session. Yeah, just if that's a yes.
I mean, thank you for mentioning the European elections, 6th till 9th of June, for those of you who are not aware yet. And nothing specific to add, but maybe just to highlight that it's the European Parliament is always when it comes to having more initiatives related to culture, for example, at the European level, the Council, which represents the member states, is always a bit reluctant to give more competence or more power to the European level. And the stronger or the higher the voter turnout in the elections, the more power you give to the European Parliament, no matter who you vote for, but in the interinstitutional relations. So let's assume 99% of citizens vote. That will show the member states the Parliament is really strong and represents the people. If we have 40%, the Council will keep on saying, well, you know, nobody cares about you. So that's just a message. And then, of course, depending on who you vote for, which political party, I'm not telling you who to vote for, of course. And I work for members of the Parliament from the left, from the Conservatives, Greens, Liberals, almost all political parties. But be aware of what they have on their mind when it comes to culture. My experience I've been working in the Parliament for almost 10 years. My experience is all politicians support and like culture. You won't find a single politician who does not support culture. But when it comes to actual commitments, for example, financial commitments, increasing the budget of the Creative Euro program, for example, or how culture is being defined, what kind of culture do we want? Do we want to have a European culture that is united in diversity, or do we want to have our national cultures, for example? Then, of course, it really depends on which political party you vote for. So that might be, since all of you are somewhat related to culture, I think this might be an interesting aspect here. So maybe just to keep that on your mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benjamin. Maybe a final word from each of you before we close the session?
Perhaps a final recommendation, because I had the experience to work with an European volunteer, and I like this program. And if you are driving an institution and you like to work with young people, it's really a good program, Youth for Europe, and it's well financed.
Okay, thank you. One last recommendation.
Well, I don't have anything particular to say as final words. I think I contributed with my,
with your thoughts. So I put on the next slide.
Thank you so much for being here. And
we can do the closing together and invite everyone to the European Forum on Music, hosted by the Bulgarian Music Association and the European Music Council. So come and join us 5 to 7 June in Bulgaria, Sofia. And both of us, we invite you to
I forgot about
join. No, I wanted to. Together. So thanks for being with me here. I think we had an interesting exchange. I hope it was also interesting for you, with some new input or maybe new ideas on funding, on mono-beneficiary applications and new calls. And if you feel sharing more input, you have at least my data here, and don't hesitate to also share your thoughts and contribute. Thank you very much. And thanks to you.